All right, we'll go ahead and call this Tooele City Planning Commission meeting to order this Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 at the hour of 7 p.m. here at City Council Chambers. If you please rise with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, second item on our agenda is a roll call. Commissioner Hammer.
Here.
Commissioner Proctor.
Here.
Commissioner Sloan.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Jensen.
Here.
Commissioner Goches.
Present.
We've also recognized Commissioner Dunn and Commissioner Newell in the back. I am Commissioner Hamilton. I am also present. Let's recognize staff members, Mr. Agard, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Bolzer, and Mr. Baker, and council members Manzione and Hanson. Thank you all for attending. All right, first item on our agenda, or third item on our agenda here is a public hearing and recommendation on a zoning map amendment to consider a request to reassign the zoning for approximately 324 acres located at approximately 1200 west, 700 south from the existing zones of LI Light Industrial and RD Research and Development to the Tooele Business Park CSD Commercial Special District Zone, and to authorize the specific standards that accompany the CSD designation. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. Tonight for this item, I'm going to tag team this presentation with the Economic Development Director, Jared Stewart, who's right over there. I'll give you the basics on this, and then he can present what the applicant is requesting. The CSD Commercial Special District is proposed for the approximately 324 acre area outlined in red on the aerial photograph. You note that it encompasses the property between the Union Pacific Rail Corridor and I believe that's 1050 west, 1100 west, and then from about 1220 south up to approximately I think that's about 300 south. The zoning of the property is currently two different zones. It is RD Research and Development and LI Light Industrial, divided fairly close to even between the two different zones. And then the land use map designates the properties as regional commercial. The applicant is requesting the Commercial Special District to authorize specific zoning standards for a business park. A CSD is authorized by the city's code, and it has certain criteria that must be followed in order to qualify for a CSD. And they're fairly simple criteria. There's just two of them. Number one, you have to have 50 acres. Obviously, this property has more than 50 acres. And then number two, it has to have a designation of commercial on the land use map. It doesn't have to be zoned commercial, but it has to be designated as commercial in the land use map, which this property is. So the CSD is a special zone that allows the developer or the applicant to basically write their own zoning code. They can dictate design standards, they can dictate the uses that go in there, the setbacks, pretty much carte blanche to write their own zoning code. And this is very close to what we refer to as form-based codes. It provides a lot of flexibility for design professionals to do what they do best. And the applicant is proposing the CSD for this particular area. They did include the proposed language that they're looking at this point in time, and I'll let Mr. Stewart discuss that with you. As far as the process goes, CSDs are approved in exactly the same manner as a zoning map amendment. So it comes to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, you make a recommendation, and then it goes to the City Council for final decision. The difference here is the Planning Commission and the City Council are going to be approving a new ordinance in association to the zone. So that's where we need a little more review from both the Commission and the City Council. If the zoning is changed, the zoning on the map itself would be Tooele Business Park CSD. So that's the zone that would be on the zoning map. This item is a public hearing, and notices were sent to property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. There were a lot of notices that went out. We have received 6 written comments asking questions about the proposal, Some people were expressing some concerns. All of those comments were forwarded onto the Planning Commission for your information. We also received a comment approximately 10 minutes before the meeting, which was forwarded to you if you've had a chance to read it. If not, you should have it in your email. So anyway, I'll turn the time over to Jared and let him carry on with the application, but those are the basics that I wanted to present to you.
Thank you, Mr. Agard. And Catherine, will you please let the minutes reflect Mr. Stewart is joining us tonight too from city staff.
Hey, thank you, commissioners. This is a unique opportunity and sorry, gosh, my words are not coming out. Yeah, a unique project, really. And I wanted to take a little time and talk about the context behind this and really address a lot of the public comments that we received too, which I think hopefully, really as I read through those, I was impressed that people actually read through this whole application and had great comments. And I want to make sure we address those and take time to discuss. You know, as we looked at this property, the redevelopment agency owns probably 60% of this property, right? About 180 acres. And then there's 4 or so other owners, private owners in the property. And as we look at needs in Tooele City, as we did an economic development strategic plan a couple years back, and one of the assets that we recognized is we have rail in Tooele, right? We have rail access and this property that we own, and that's a unique asset in Tooele that we can utilize to meet our economic development goals. One of which is, as we all know, there's so many people who need to commute out of town to reach jobs, right? Some estimates are 75% of folks have to leave town for employment opportunities in the Salt Lake and other areas. So one of our objectives is to create jobs, right? So that's the kind of context behind this property. As we looked at a commercial special district, a CSD, we saw that this might be an opportunity to look at the whole property. It's a unique size. We could, at the same time, create then architectural standards, landscape standards that are lower to reduce water usage. We could look at various uses and kind of design those into a site in a planned and hopefully smart way to approach this in a way that will benefit the city. So that was kind of our goal, right, and our objectives. As we looked at this, even this week we were reviewing the requirements for a commercial special district. I do want to be very clear that, you know, it was noted that there's a line in our code that says mixed use, special use, and industrial land uses shall not be considered a commercial land use for the purposes of considering eligibility for a CSD. So there's some conflict there between our vision for maybe this property, what it could be, and what's actually in the code too. And I'm very appreciative of Roger and his time to review that with me and look through this and try to find a path forward that might be good. So as we look at this and consider this tonight, it's just fine if we don't have a positive or negative recommendation. And if we table it and need future revisions and need to come back and look at it at a future date, that's all right. And with it being such a large site, this isn't a development that will happen all at once. There isn't a particular business that will use all of this property. As you can see on the map that's shown, there's numerous potential businesses, and this is just a concept, you know, so it's to demonstrate to prospective businesses that what we could do on the property. So this will take years to develop and years to kind of come to a place where as you see it in that concept. So I think that's kind of the initial context behind everything. And now I want to get into some of the public comments. You know, some of the things were like, oh, why don't we use just conventional zoning was one comment that we had a couple times, or question rather. And it kind of goes back to a little bit of what I just covered. There's a uniqueness to the size of this property, and in none of our zones do we have architectural standards right now, right? So this is an opportunity where we can say, instead of, it's not lowering the standard for development, it's actually raising the standard of development, so that as businesses come in, they have to create structures and buildings that look nice and that have low water use, and they're required, according to what we've tried to create here, to live up to a higher standard of development, I guess. Another comment that we had was we had comments about concerns about increase in crime, speeding, property values. Really, we do believe that this development will create responsible, business-oriented interests in the neighborhood. We notice it even in the downtown area. Small business owners, they care about the properties. They care about the community. Business has a vested interest to make crime or to reduce crime. Business has a vested interest to improve the community for employees, right? We really do think that having more, rather than just vacant properties, having businesses in this area will hopefully reduce crime, right? Hopefully eyes on the road, right? There will be people in the area who are responsible and working and business owners, and they'll care about the properties in the area. Speeding, a lot of times people, and maybe this is anecdotal for me, people speed when there's nothing around on the road. It's a wide open road. Tooele Boulevard at the south end, that's kind of what it is right now. There's not much there. As there's buildings and properties and things going on, and a little more traffic from people coming and going for jobs, the hope is that kind of reduces traffic. Not reduces traffic, reduces speed, and keeps people more conforming to the speed limits. In terms of property values, this is an important aspect of our goals as a city to increase and bolster the tax base, right? Residential properties and developments are only required by state code to pay basically half of their assessed property values. Commercial, industrial properties pay a full property tax on their assessed value. So it's great for our tax base, this type of development compared to residential developments. So, one thing that was noted is there was questions about Mid-Valley Highway. How does this affect future developments here? You can kind of see in this map there's a road that goes through and curves around the property, outlined in purple. That is the right-of-way for the future Mid-Valley Highway, which we are still working with UDOT on. That's the actual Mid-Valley Highway, and the timing of that construction and development is not determined by Tooele City. It's up to UDOT. What we can do is we can build a bypass road that will complement Mid-Valley Highway. As that's constructed, they'll probably need a bypass road anyways to get in and out and to build that road. And as we build a road, and you can see what we intend as the quote-unquote bypass road, connects to Tooele Boulevard and goes south from there. That would, one, act as a buffer between development and residential, and two, connect then down into SR 36, where we could pull traffic instead of through the community, can go from SR 36 to the south and north, connecting into Tooele Boulevard and then to Utah Avenue. Hopefully reducing a lot of traffic through our Main Street area as well, which is important to the city. How do we pay for that road? We sell property, right? We can sell these properties and collaborate with the other property owners to build that road and then make more of the property developable. Right now, the properties on the south and especially the southwest, there's no infrastructure near those, right? There's no roads, there's no utilities, so we out of necessity, it would start at the north and then kind of go south from there. And property sales will allow us to build those roads. Uses. As we look at the table of uses that's here, Maybe that needs refinement. We're very open to adjusting that as needed. One of the public comments noted that hazardous materials was a conditional use. I think we can probably take that out, right? We can make that a non-permitted use in the project, or the zoning rather. So, you know, in addition to that, maybe it would be wise to go back and create a map that could be attached to this zoning application with kind of hatches overlaid that showed, okay, here's where rail would be permitted, and sometimes rail comes with heavier uses, right? That's, you know, it's trains. So it kind of, if we do get rail in this area, then those uses would need to be to the west of the property as shown in that map, away from the residential. We wouldn't want those near the residential. And then that map could also show, okay, near the residential, we could have commercial or lighter industrial uses. Lastly, there was a couple comments about wind turbines, right? We've got one prospective buyer of property at the very north. You can see on this map, it's on the left of 25 acres there. It's shown as like building A and B, I think. They're interested in manufacturing materials for cables for ski resorts, snowmaking machines, that sort of thing. It's a light industrial use. And there aren't residential properties adjoining those parcels. So, and they also, as another part of their business, they manufacture wind turbines, and they are interested in putting one wind turbine on the property to generate the power that they would use and you know, essentially create their own energy for the property. Wind turbines come in a variety of sizes, right? And so I want to put some context with that wind turbine just so we all are kind of on the same page. The Army Depot has 2 wind turbines that are 80 meters tall. That's 262 feet. That 80 meters is to the hub where the blades come out of. So the actual blades go higher than that 262 feet. These wind turbines, as written in the CSD, it would only allow 175 feet. This company is pitching wind turbines that max out at the tip of the blade at 165 feet. So it's really about half the height of those other wind turbines. So they are much smaller. It is listed as a conditional use. So if someone were to want to put a wind turbine on a property, they'd have to come and go through the conditional use permit process, which I would hope that I would assume that we probably wouldn't put those right next to abutting residential properties, right? And that we would want those away and to not have impacts on other properties. So I think those are all my comments addressing the public questions and comments that had come in. And I think I will leave it at that. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. I just talked a whole lot, so.
No, it's good. It's a big meaty subject, so let's bring it back to the commission for questions or comments for staff. Yes, Commissioner Jensen.
I'll make a comment. I think you did a really good job explaining all that to us, Jared. I appreciate that, and it seems like you did a lot of research on the public comments and everything, and that's good. And I actually had some of the notes for like 716A-3 where they spelled out the commercial special district eligibility that you brought up, so I'm glad you brought that up too. Some of the concerns I have is the heavy industrial, where if the whole area is zoned that, even with the conditional use permit, it's pretty difficult to stop that right behind those houses, even with it, because we pretty much have to approve that. Because, you know, if we can find a way to mitigate any of those conditions. And if we did the whole thing into this zoning, then they could do any of that anywhere in the zoning, basically. So that's one of the big concerns that I have. Then also where there's no sidewalks on the roads and only one on one side of Twilla Boulevard. If you say that they're only has to be, or probably only one sidewalk on one side of Twilla Boulevard. No, I'm not saying that's for sure what the developer would do, but then they definitely could do that, and not, I think, we should do sidewalks, and I'd like to see that in there. And then also, on your building height requirements, 85 feet seems kind of high to me, personally. I think, and then also there's no minimum height for the building heights, and I think there's something in the city code that says there has to be at least 1 story above ground in the city code as well. I don't have that exact code written down here, but when I was reading through it this afternoon in between phone calls and other things I was doing, I did see that. And then on the table also, it seems like it pretty much matches up with what it's already zoned, besides the research and development part. But for the light industrial, it's pretty close to what is already zoned there. So I think we're pretty close to having it, but those are my concerns.
Okay, yeah, and I understand the concern with heavier industrial uses, right? And I think, those who are more expert can tell me if this would help. I think maybe creating a map where we have hatches that shows heavy industrial is permitted here and not elsewhere. Maybe that would help.
I think if we did the future highway that's in purple highlighted there, I mean, just an idea, if just west of that, maybe you would allow, because that still gives that buffer between the houses and the industrial, and I really doubt you're going to run rail. I mean, I wouldn't think you'd want to run it through a future highway to these other businesses on the other side, and that future highway, it looks like it comes off at 1220 west there to me on the map.
Correct, yeah.
So that'd be like 12, so maybe something like that. And I don't know if that would have to be like a split zoning to get it different, or I don't know how that works as far as the actual code goes, but.
If we do end up moving forward with this CSD, we could, there's options, right? Maybe we do 2 different zoning types, or if we do end up, if the CSD language is amended, so we could use a CSD for industrial type uses, then we could include some specifications in there and where industrial could be and where it could not. So I think it's flexible enough, and if I speak out of line, someone can correct me, I guess, but that's my understanding.
I think it's a good start to at least the conversation.
Okay. Good. Sidewalks, I think that's a great comment as well. That's one thing we kind of discussed, and we're like, okay, if this is more industrial west of that future Mid-Valley Highway, do we need sidewalks? But let's put them in, that's fine with me.
Some people that ride their bikes down in that area and stuff right now, so.
Yeah,
Sunshine.
great. Thank you.
Commissioner Robinson.
Can I ask a couple questions, Jared?
Yes.
3 questions, really. First, how are we feeling comfortable moving forward with this with so much uncertainty regarding that highway, first of all? And second of all, with the addition of rail? I'm not familiar with how rail works. I really know nothing about it, but it seems to play a big part in this. And so I don't know how that plays into it. I would think that there's some level of uncertainty about it. That's
Great
my first
questions.
question. My second question is, with the conglomeration of landowners that are involved, you said the city owns about 60%. I'm wondering how that all works out with 40% of this out of city hands, because it's owned by private people who may want to decide what to do on their own and strike different bargains. And I completely forget what my third question was. If you start with those two, then that'll placate me for at least a minute.
Yeah, no, wonderful questions. I'll start with rail, right? We've been working with CRS Engineering, who helped us create this concept, right? And actually in a grant with the county, they're helping pay for part of those engineering costs too. So we have approached with CRS Union Pacific, right? And they have what's called a DevCon application, a development concept, right? And we've gone ahead and applied for a development concept preliminary approval with Union Pacific. And that means they would look at this concept, they'd look at the engineering of it. CRS Engineering works with them regularly, and actually Union Pacific gave us like 5 firms probably a year ago that do work with them regularly, and so we reached out to a couple of those firms and ended up working with CRS to develop this concept. Where does that go from here, right? Union Pacific has a process to review and approve a concept. They're reviewing it now. They just got back to me this week actually and said with some follow-up questions, and we're looking at that process with them. They also have what's called a UP Focus Site program. And Union Pacific has businesses that will come to them and say, hey, I need a rail-served site in the western United States somewhere. And what do you know about that where we could locate? And Union Pacific could actually help funnel new prospective employers and business developments to our community through that program. So that's our intent, is to apply for that program with Union Pacific, and they'll help us know what infrastructure is needed for rail at this site. CRS has been already pretty helpful with that. Essentially what this would be is we have the Union Pacific line that goes adjacent to the property. We'd have a rail spur that comes off of that, and a switch really that comes off of that, and maybe several rail lines, so you could kind of load rail cars in there. We've spoken with 2 groups, Peterson Industrial Depot and Savage Transportation Services, that both operate rail transload facilities at the industrial depot now. Both are interested in participating with us, which would mean they would potentially construct the rail on our behalf and own it and operate it, and then be able to unload rail cars and take those materials to these businesses and buildings that are served by it. And so that's kind of our plan, right? We've been talking to Union Pacific. We've talked to these 2 groups about operating transload facilities and actually owning and operating that rail. And we did last month actually apply for congressional funding through Chris Stewart's office to get funding for actual rail construction too. And I don't know if we'll actually get that funding, right? That's kind of a grant, and who knows how competitive that is, and that'll be a while before we know if we are approved for any of that funding too. So that's our plan for rail. Sorry. Next thing, Mid-Valley Highway, some uncertainty there. Yes, we know that it will come eventually. We don't know when. We think this is the alignment, but UDOT hasn't formally announced the alignment for Mid-Valley Highway. That said, we don't need Mid-Valley Highway to operate this business park. With the bypass road that we have coming off Twilla Boulevard, that creates the kind of the backbone and the start of the rail, of the road system. And all the other roads in there would be locally owned roads, and we could operate effectively without Mid-Valley Highway while still preserving the right-of-way for Mid-Valley Highway. And, hopefully, Mid-Valley Highway, we will know the formal alignment within a reasonable time before a lot of this development happens, right? So I don't know exactly when UDOT will release that, but it won't be 5 years down the road. It will be more like 6 months down the road, probably. So let's see, private owners. Okay, next question. I've been coordinating with the other owners for some of them more recently in the last 3 months, others going back probably a year and a half. They've provided statements that should be in your packet of interest, that they are interested in participating, and they're excited for this development, right? There's several of them that are pretty landlocked. They're back in there with no infrastructure, no roads, they're like, yes, let's do something that makes this property usable for us, right? And it's a mix of local owners. There's several that live here in town and are local owners, and there's others that that are not locally based, but very interested in development and interested in partnering with us to help construct roads, right? And actually having some skin in the game too. So a lot of coordination there. When it comes to actual property sales, when we have a business that comes and we actually want to sell a property to them, we'll have a realtor get involved with us and help us structure those, like a participation agreement in terms of that sale, right? And what those sale prices will be. And every time there's a real estate transaction, it's kind of a negotiation, right? But I've talked a lot about price ranges with those owners too, so they're all aware of what our objectives are and are in support of selling property that we can be sure of, right? I don't anticipate that anyone will really hold out on us and hold us hostage on something, and because we've been communicating, I think, pretty effectively over the last year.
Good.
Forgot your third one?
We'll see if anybody else asks it.
Okay.
Sorry if those were long answers.
Nope,
I
that's
just
great.
kind of
That's what I've
getting it all out there. So
More detail we have, the better. we are, so.
Commissioner?
Yes, Commissioner Goches.
Thank you. I did take the time to speak with Jared, and so I've asked some of the questions that I just think would probably be good for the record and for the public that's here. I asked him if there is a drainage channel, or is there a designation for such a conservancy easement? Because I know that historically, we've had floodwaters that have traveled down that 700 South Road, and there's also a covered ditch now. It used to be an open ditch that was used by the Settlement Canyon for runoff. We were able to close it, but some of that water does travel underneath the road and goes over into that adjacent property. And there is a plan for the detention basin, so I just wanted to ask him a little bit about that drainage route. So can you give us some information about that?
yes, so right where Tooele Boulevard currently ends and connects with 700 South, there's stormwater that comes out of there. Tooele City has recorded easements for stormwater drainage, and we intend to maintain those easements if they need to. And most of all, it's very important we maintain the capacity of that stormwater and probably expand it, right? I think in this concept, it shows fairly large detention areas for stormwater that are expanded upon what is existing. And so we want to make sure that that is maintained. And if we do expand those, there's a benefit to business development, because we can say to a business, hey, you can use this stormwater basin for your retention and not need as much on-site work done. So that's pending, expansion of those and an analysis of capacity in those stormwater basins as well. So, but that is an important public utility that we want to maintain.
Thanks. And I just think it's kind of exciting that, that we do have the opportunity to create this business park, and that it's an opportunity for us to create those standards that will be used in that park. So it's not that it's open-ended to the developer, that we have the opportunity to decide what's going to be best for the interest of the city and the residents that are here. I did have a question, I think you kind of answered that, regarding who would pay for the road and the infrastructure, and being able to have a provision for future connection cost. The property owners would bear those costs, since, there will be an expense to the city. I also was glad that there would be some opportunity to put some like fencing provisions in there that would be really obscuring. We'd have the opportunity to write that in the ordinance, so that the business code could be uniform and not just, broken up into different designs. So I was glad about that. I appreciated the comments from the public who are concerned, and just, grateful that we have the opportunity to participate together. We can share that responsibility to develop this property to the highest, best use for our city and for residents and those who live around that area. I am one of them. I live in that area. So, thank you.
Now this side of the table. I know you do.
Actually, most of mine have been asked and answered. I appreciate it. I
Good.
think I'm a little bit concerned, as Commissioner Robinson mentioned, that I hesitate to use any legislative quotes, but passing it and then finding out what's in it scares me to death. I'm not against the project itself, but we have a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And again, Jared, I appreciate your work. It's excellent work, and I appreciate the vision. But I wrote this down. We've got to figure out if the vision meets the code. And unless there's a really big hurry, I've got a couple of concerns. The wind turbine does concern me, not that specifically, but
It's fair,
But
yeah.
the height, as well as the other, I appreciate the thought of putting all of your tall stuff on the west side of the highway, but unless you put it way west of the highway, an 85-foot tall building is still going to affect a residential area. Now, I understand that also we don't generally consider viewscape as a protected right, but it's something to consider as well. Again, I'm not against the project itself. I'm not sure that it's all the way baked yet.
Great. Yeah. And, we have, as I mentioned, 25 acres at the north end that's under contract for sale, right? So what the plan for that is now, in light of this probably not being ready to approve right now or recommend for approval right now, is that I'll come back in 2 weeks with a light industrial rezone request for that property so that we can sell that and have it be effective for their use. That doesn't mean that property couldn't be included or wouldn't be included in the future CSD anyways. So you'll probably see me again in 2 weeks, and then as we refine this, we can keep having discussions and building height, sidewalks, the mix of uses and where those should go, and importantly, getting the code and the vision to finding some kind of alignment there. Those are things we'll look at and refine.
Good. Is that it for the commission for staff?
Commissioner, I have just one more question, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
please, Commissioner Goches.
To go along with what Commissioner Robinson asked about the rail, does the city have any authority to request that rail crossings be either an underpass or an overpass, that we can prevent at-grade crossing? That's kind
Great
of,
question.
difficult for people who are stopped behind the railroad tracks.
Yeah, and we actually, in this design, there are no, excuse me, there are no at-grade crossings. There's a long kind of cul-de-sac in there. Cul-de-sacs, fire concern, right? There would be an access for emergency and fire at that cul-de-sac that would cross a railroad. But ideally, that would not be a public crossing, and it would still be regulated, if there's, with like the arms and the required signage for that crossing, but that wouldn't be a public crossing, just for emergency or special access. So that's a great thing about working with CRS, is they're very aware of our concerns with public railroad crossings as well. So we kind of mitigated that with design.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Apparently my side of the table's done.
And most of the questions got answered.
You guys got any more questions or comments? All right. This item does require a public hearing. If we could please, you have your timer ready, Commissioner Sloan. Please keep the comments to 3 minutes. And once again, if you've if someone has already stated those comments, I mean, you can reiterate, but we've heard it once. We don't need to hear it 14 times. But we do appreciate your comments and your concerns. We need to know those before we can move forward on any of this. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing now for item number 3 on our agenda. If you would, please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and also write your name for the record.
Wow.
Yes, please.
I don't know if we talked about traffic or,
Would you state your name for the record first, please?
Jed Richardson.
Thank you.
I live on 1220 South, and we have a lot of traffic moving up and down that road, and they move quite quickly. And are the roads going to go in first, and then the industrial park, or is 1220 and Tempe Road going to be greatly affected with this? And also, we've been on water rations for how long now? And you know, I know that they've fashioned this to use less water, but less water of what water we have. Settlement Canyon empties almost every year. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Hi there, my name's Chris Ferguson. I just wanted to, the only other comment that was brought up was for lighting. I have an interest in the night sky, and the statement that the lights only have to point down just seems to be a little bit not stringent enough in my eyes. It was put in one of the things, I don't know if you guys read it, that one example is like the car dealership. I mean, it's the brightest spot in town and everything points down. So I had concerns for that. And my only other comment would be I'm glad that the board shares a lot of my concerns too, as far as division of the property and what is permitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergson.
Hi, my name is Scott Paris. If you look on that map, you could probably see our house. My wife and I live on at 954 South, 1050 West. So our backyard, we can open the fence and literally walk into that field. Realize it's not my field. And, but I'm just curious I don't see anything on the map of, there's no development of, I guess there's a 100-foot easement, but would that 100-foot easement be landscaped, or is it just going to be kept a field? I know it's your guys' responsibility. Right now there's a fire barrier. I think it's 100 feet from that fence, that residential zone. I'm just wondering how that gets affected with this development. And then my main concern is, I hear the word business park. I've seen I've worked in architecture for 15 years. There's some really good business parks. The one in West Valley where Discover Card is, I think that's a well thought out, good looking business park. But then you can go over by the airport and see those business parks, and they just don't look very good. My concern would be something like what's going on next to the Purple Factory and what R&O Construction's doing. Just a bunch of concrete tilt-up buildings, and I realize what those buildings are for. They're dirt cheap to make, they're dirt cheap to rent, but they don't look very good. And I don't think they're gonna do anything but they're not gonna raise our property value. They can only hurt it. So it encourages me to hear you guys talk about architectural standards and coming up with something and like design standards. That's great. I just would hope that it's more than just a concrete building. Building A is concrete, Building B is concrete. We just painted them different colors. So, but thank you for allowing us to come, and thank you for, again, sharing some of the concerns that we as residents that live in that development have. And also that you can't see it, there's a school right there, Settlement Canyon Elementary School. Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And is our fire department staffed for something like this? So those are my questions, other questions and concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, hold on, Mr.
Parrish, just
Parrish.
real quick, did you get an opportunity to look at the renderings of the proposed construction and the design?
No,
standards?
just the site plan.
Okay. What's the best way to get into those? But I think you'd be happy.
Website.
Yeah, I'm not an architect, but I think you'd be happy with the renderings of what's proposed. And
Okay.
that's exactly that, it's concept and proposed. So what I'm not seeing is any of the stuff that you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, great. That'd be awesome. If we could see those, I mean, that's what I do. I do the 3D renderings and illustrations for my firm. So that'd be awesome if we could see them, if the public could see those. Thank you.
If you guys would mind signing the record for us, please, sorry. Make sure your name's spelled right. And if I'm corrected, that our packet is on the Twila City website, correct? Yeah, you can go on Twila City website under Planning Commission. Our packet is on there with the agenda.
Thank you.
Chairman, those example renderings start on page 29 of your packet, if someone is looking for it.
There you go.
Knew I could count on you.
I'd hate to come to a meeting and not share my opinion. I got lots of them. Okay,
Kind of my job here, too.
I won't. Thanks, Jed.
It's kind of hard to talk and write at the same time. Huh?
I know. I have a long name too. I have to still spell my last name. I'm Kalani Mascherino. I live on 2 O'Clock Drive, so this is my neighborhood. My concerns are noise, whatever light industrial noise. We have enough noise in our lives. We don't need more noise. The emissions of whatever, I mean, I'm sure we're going to go over, as Jared said, who would be allowed there, but just, you know, we already can smell several some things on the south side of town. I wrote noise and sound. See, I'm extra worried about how noisy it's gonna get, because when I sit at my house around my campfire, I can hear the trains run at night. That's all I wanna hear. I wanna hear the trains and I wanna see the stars. And that's why I love my street and my neighbors. I'm nervous about how the employees are gonna get there, because yes, it will bring jobs, but that is 1220 Tempe, which goes right past the school, which is already, you know, there's 650 to 700 students, I believe. And it is a neighborhood school, so the kids that are bused there are from South Rim or Stockton. So everybody else walks or is driven there by their parents. And then next to that is Spencer's Field, which is the home of the flag football in Tooele County. So every night and every Saturday, rain, sunshine, there is flag football and there are kids. And you have to be extra careful because the kids start, you know, they're excited and they don't pay attention. I just don't want it to be an eyesore. Like, if we can make it pretty, the pretty codes. We're back to the pretty code conversation. And I know that the railroad goes all the way through to Tooele County. Do we not have another 300 acres where it could go that would be easier, quieter, smell better, so that we could put it? Because you're also gonna need places for the employees to park. So it's going to be buildings and parking lots. That is not pretty to me. So, I mean, part of the fun of living here is sending all the night sky pictures to everybody that doesn't get to enjoy what we have. And I know that what we see is not guaranteed, but it would be awesome if we could keep it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mascherino.
My name is Nick Broderick. I agree with the concerns that have already been brought up. I live on 1050. My wife and I purchased that home for the view that we knew wasn't a long-term guarantee, but we hoped it was longer term than the last 8 years we've lived there. Watching sunsets on our back deck is a tradition we have, we love and enjoy. Again, we know that's not a guaranteed thing that we have, but it is an enjoyment we get out of living in this community, and we would like that to stay if at all possible. Another concern I had, one thing that was brought up was jobs that these properties would supply. I don't know that they would be enough in this specific area to warrant building specifically here. So I agree with that question. Is there not another property currently zoned that would function in a similar capacity that would not affect a community in the same way that it would ours? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roderick.
My name is Ann Paris. I'm the wife of that guy. And he was nudging me to come up here and ask a question that he forgot. What sort of business would warrant 85 feet? Because that seems more than light industrial. That seems a little heavier duty. And then just while I'm up here, I'm going to reiterate, we live on 1050 West. We have 2, soon to be 3 children. And we live on a street full of children and around a school. So I'm going to plead a mother's case and say I'm not super excited about faster cars, more traffic in an area that has a lot of young families. So,
Thank you, Ms. Parrish.
My name is Michelle Bessendorfer. My husband and I live on 1050 West as well, and that's our backyard as well. Kind of in relation to, I know property tax values was brought up earlier, but it was only addressed from the city's standpoint. So one of our concerns is, of course, how is an 85-foot building in my backyard right up against my fence going to impact my property values? And also, is it going to be shadowing my entire yard? I know this sounds selfish, for my garden. Is my garden going to grow if there's no sunlight from tall buildings? So, and then, of course, everybody else has said about all of the children in the area and our beautiful view. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bessendorfer. Rock and roll.
Mr. Chair, I had one question before you close the public hearing, and I can't even believe I'm going to say this. If we're going to possibly table this, do we want to keep the public hearing open. I make that very motion. Okay. All right, I just wanted to, huh?
Coming from Matt, wow.
Yeah, that's, watch for the lightning, but before you wanted to shut it down, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to bring that up because.
Did you have something else, Ms. Mascherino? Please.
Okay, sorry, I forgot. I was trying to keep notes, but okay. I love to beat the dead horse of UDOT because of how unsafe my end of town is on SR 36. But again, if these employees are coming, so if they don't just live in my neighborhood and they can use the sidewalks on both sides, as Ms. Gocha said, then they're gonna come from town or from the other end of town, north or south. And we have a turn lane this wide. And again, you have to slam on your brakes to make that turn. And we're still competing with the gravel trucks. We're still competing with the buses. They have not moved. People tell me they're moving. They haven't moved. And everything, and all the other traffic. And it just gets busier and busier on SR 36. So now we're even making it more busy because there's no way all of their supplies are coming on a rail car. They're gonna come by truck. They're gonna come by box truck, semi truck. And then we're sending them right through the neighborhoods to get there, which is concerning. It's concerning for people trying to get on and off 36 and for them to get the supplies they need. So that was my PS.
Lonnie, I may be wrong, and staff can correct me on this. Unless they're on a designated truck route, they're not rolling semis through your neighborhood. Is that correct, staff?
Oh, they do.
Well, I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying they're not allowed.
And you guys should report.
And then you guys should be reporting every time you see that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I guess they would just come down to Willa Boulevard. They don't.
But that's
Okay.
a whole different subject, and we'll give you
Right.
dispatch's number before you leave.
Oh, I got it. Memorized.
Thanks, Ms. Mascherino. Mr. Bolzer.
I just wanted to make a comment to Commissioner Robinson's suggestion, so please feel free to continue with the public comment, but before you close it, I wanted to just make a recommendation to his thought. So I don't know if you want that now or if you're looking for more public comment.
Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in light of some of the suggested revisions in the scope of those that Mr. Stewart discussed, I would actually recommend in this case that you continue the public hearing so that when those come back, understanding they could be fairly drastic, that there would have ample opportunity to comment on those, on the actual application at that time as well. Now, that being said, you can do it in one of two ways. And I'm going to recommend one over the other. One being you can simply leave it open through the conclusion of this meeting and then into whenever it comes back. Or what I would recommend is you close the public hearing this evening so that you can properly allow for your continued deliberation. And then in your motion to continue the item, just motion that it will be continued as a public hearing as well. And so effectively you'll have a second public hearing on the item. But by closing it tonight, you would have your proper procedural opportunity to have deliberation following the public hearing for your continued effort this evening. Also, Mr. Stewart mentioned the possibility of bringing back a separate zoning map amendment for potentially a single piece of this or single element of this site. That would have its own public hearing and its own notification requirement for which letters would be sent out. They will not be sent out to the extent that this one is, because it is based on the size of the property and the distance from the boundary of that property. So some of the property owners that are here this evening may not in fact get that notice specifically. So I would encourage everyone to keep an eye on the city's websites for upcoming agendas for anything in this area or any other topic that they may be interested in.
Question, Jim, just taking your suggestion as far as how we handle the public hearing, closing it tonight, reopening it, does that cause staff any additional notice issues?
On the surface, it would not unless you specifically request that.
Commissioner Sloan, in support of Jim's recommendation, that would also give staff the opportunity of noticing again the new public hearing. Instead of just leaving it open and not publishing a new notice, we would have a new public hearing and publish a new notice. And you'd have, it would have a greater likelihood of being an effective public hearing if you were to do it that way.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, with everything having been said, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing tonight and bring it back to the commission for further motion.
Do you want to jump into the unknown and actually call for a table?
Yeah, sure, I'll do it.
I just want you on the minutes. Nobody will believe us.
Mr. Chair, I move that we table this item until some of the questions that have come up specifically about water, traffic, lights, easements, schools, firemen, noise, height of buildings, and whatever else comes to mind.
That's relatively open-ended, I think.
Yeah, can be adequately addressed by staff, and when that is brought back, that the public hearing will be renoticed and reopened.
Before I second that, can I ask staff, based on the description that he gave you, is that too general, or can you work with that as stated?
I believe we can work with that. As the commission is aware, you have two opportunities to table. One is a condition certain and one is a date certain. Date certain would be simply we want it back on this date. The second would be a condition certain, which means we want to see this. It sounds from Commissioner Robinson's explanation that he's looking for the substantial changes that Mr. Stewart discussed. When those are prepared, the notice will be sent out again and will be brought back to you at that time.
Thank you, and I'll second that motion.
All right, we got a motion to table with a lot of extra comment from Commissioner Robinson and a second from Commissioner Sloan
With not very much comment.
with no comment. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. This one is tabled until staff can wrinkle out some, or iron out some wrinkles. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for all your comments. Well taken. Moves us on to item. Go ahead.
It's probably not appropriate, but just so that you're aware of what our additional druthers are, the comment regarding vision versus code, I think needs to be resolved as part of that motion, if that wasn't clear. Is that fair?
Yep, that is indeed fair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I appreciate it. Number 4 on our agenda is a recommendation on a minor subdivision request for the 5-star subdivision by Cameron Dortch to subdivide 19.4 acres located at 1471 West L Avenue into 4 industrial lots and accompanying railroad parcels in the PID Industrial Zoning District. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Planning Commissioners. This minor subdivision involves the parcel of record highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. It's located east of Garnett Street and south of L Avenue. Garnett Street is a public street. The other roads shown on the aerial photograph are private rights-of-way. As you can see, the parcel is already built out. It includes 4 existing warehouse structures. This subdivision request is on property that is on PID Industrial, with some standard industrial zoning located to the east. And then this is the subdivision plat that's being proposed. This subdivision does not result in any new development. As you can see on the aerial photograph, the properties are already developed. This is a request by the owner of the property to create 4 parcels, a little bit larger than the footprints of the building. And the purpose of that is to sell those off individually. So it's just a situation where they want to be able to sell some of the buildings on their own lots, and that's what the purpose of the subdivision is. The industrial zone doesn't have a lot of criteria in regards to lot size. It only requires that lots be 80 feet wide, and all of the lots and parcels in the subdivision plat exceed that lot width requirement. So the subdivision as proposed does meet and exceed all of the lot requirements in the industrial zoning districts. Again, no new developments proposed here. It's just for ownership purposes. We are recommending approval of the subdivision plat with the basic housekeeping conditions in your report. Like I said, no development, so there really isn't any application there, but we always include those in just in case we miss something. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer those for you.
All right, Mr. Agard, let's bring it back to the commission for any other further questions or comments. Oh, seeing none. I'll entertain a motion on item number 4 on our agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Proctor?
I move we forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the 5-star subdivision, minor subdivision requested by Cameron Dortch, application number P23-25, based on the findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated April 4th, 2023.
I got a positive recommendation from Commissioner Proctor. The chair will go ahead and second that. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan? Aye. Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
And I am Chairman Hamilton. I vote aye. That one passes 7-0. I'll move on to number 5 on our agenda is a decision on a site plan design review request by Lexington Townhomes LLC for Phase 2 of Lexington Townhomes proposed to be located at approximately 625 West, 1200 North on 2.5 acres in the MR16 Multifamily Residential Zoning District. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. This site plan design review applies to the parcel highlighted in red on the aerial photograph and is immediately south of Carroll's Way, which is 1200 North, and then located west of Franks Drive. Phase 1 of the Lexington Townhomes, as you can see on the aerial photograph, is constructed. In fact, I think it is now completed. Property, as mentioned, is MR16, as are properties to the north, east, and west, with some neighborhood commercial zoning located to the south. This is the site plan for the proposed Phase 2. It proposes the construction of 30 townhouse units. There are 2 8-plex buildings, 1 7-plex, 4-plex, and a 3-plex. 8-plex is the maximum you can have for connected units, so they have maxed that out. The layout is fairly simple. The buildings run north to south with the roads connecting to Carroll's Way for access. The internal roads on the subdivision, or excuse me, on the townhome development are private streets that will be privately owned and maintained by the HOA. The setbacks and everything that have been reviewed for the development are in compliance with the city's ordinance for building setbacks. This is the landscape plan. They are proposing primarily dryscape around the buildings. There's a little bit of sod proposed up in the corner where the detention basin is because they will have a child's play structure up there. But trees and shrubs and so forth have been strategically placed throughout the development according to the design guidelines of the city code. In regards to parking on the development, each unit has a 2-car garage, and then they have a driveway of sufficient depth to accommodate 2 cars. Under current ordinances, that accommodates the need for the unit as well as guest parking. So as far as parking goes, the units alone accommodate that, but they are also providing some small guest parking areas in addition to those that are accommodated by the units themselves. So parking should not be an issue in this development. These are the proposed elevations. They are the same elevations that you see in the current development, or Phase 1. They have been reviewed against the design guidelines in the Tooele City Code, and they comply in regards to vertical relief, exterior materials, and horizontal relief. This is the 3-plex building, as you see from the front. Each unit in the development is proposed to be a front-loaded unit. There are no rear-loaded units in this phase. And then this would be the rear facade. And then this would be the 8-unit structure. You can see the architecture is fairly similar in its appearance as the 3-plex. And then the rear facade. And the side facades would all be the same for every building. Staff has reviewed the site plan, the landscape plan, the architecture, and we are confident that it complies with all of the requirements of the Tooele City multifamily residential design guidelines. There is one small deficiency that staff did not catch. Sometimes we miss them, and we missed this one. The ordinance requires project identification signage at all project entrances. And the two entrances on Carroll's Way do not have signage. I have already reached out to the applicant, and they said that they will have no problem putting signs there. But I did include that as a condition of approval in your staff report. So when you make your approval, if you could just make mention of that. But otherwise, everything looks good. We're recommending approval, and if you have any questions, happy to answer them for you.
All right, Mr. Agard, appreciate that. Let's bring it back to the commission for further questions or comments. Hearing or seeing none, I'll go ahead. Do you have one, Commissioner
I have a
Goches?
question, if I could approach Mr. Agard. There's an indication that there's going to be a child play structure there and 4 picnic tables. And I just realized that in, phase 2, phase 1 has already brought in a large number of people, adults and children. Phase 2 is going to bring in another large amount of adults and children. And I see a need for requesting more recreation, open space. I know that there's a large grass area in Lexington Greens. I'm just wondering if in the additional phases, if we couldn't request something that could be used for organized sports and not just a play area or a tot lot. There's a need for soccer fields with children. There's a need for baseball diamonds, multi-use. That's what I'm considering. So is there a provision that we can request that?
There's nothing in the site plan design review ordinance that would authorize that. The way the ordinance is structured is amenities are provided based on the number of units, and that's the only thing in the code that is mentioned. There isn't anything about providing large sports areas. So as far as the ordinance goes, no, there is not. But, they are aware of the number of units they have. There's phase 3 that's coming in. There may be some additional amenities there, but in regards to the scale of a soccer field, that's not something that could be accommodated with this development.
Nothing in the future.
Not with this particular development. Lexington Greens at large, maybe, but the townhomes, no.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Goches,
Yes.
at this point in the game where we're approving administratively site plans, we've lost our opportunity to require those types of things. That would have to be done at the very beginning of a project, and we would have to pay for the property and amenities at that point. But this project is designed, and there's no further opportunity to require that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion on item number 5 on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the site plan design review request by Harold Irving for Phase 2 of Lexington Townhomes to be located at 625 West, 1200 North, application number P22-1191, based on the findings subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated April 5th, 2023 to include the project ID signage at all entrances.
I'll second.
I got a motion to approve with the extra condition of signage from Commissioner Sloan and a second from Commissioner Jensen. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. That one passes 7-0. Moves us on to number 6. You're ready to go. City Council reports.
I'm ready. Thank you for the great conversation tonight. It's been a great meeting. I only have a couple of items from our city council meeting, and then we don't have a city council meeting next week, so we won't have much until into May. We did approve the Vista Meadows subdivision, 47 single-family residential lots at 450 West, 600 North. We also approved the city code in regards to the notice of parking violations that gave more options for delivering parking violations rather than just leaving them on a car in a snowy mess. And then we also spent a lot of money at the last city council meeting, a lot of money. But one of the biggest things was on to construct the water reclamation facility Headworks, which is a big deal for Tula City. It was a lot of money, but it will increase the capacity for a long time. So I think it's a good purchase, good spend. And last thing I would just like to mention, I think Jim he tried to tell me that it's not, but the staff told me it's his birthday today. So I'd like to wish him a happy birthday. And also on behalf of the council and city administration, just give him a thank you. This will be his last planning commission meeting. And it was his last city council meeting, and we just wanted to tell him thank you and wish him well in his future endeavors. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, for leaving us.
I think he color coordinated today too. Was this
Yeah.
planned?
Go Buffs.
Ironically, it happened throughout our office, but using different colors.
Interesting.
A lot of different groups of similar colors.
That's funny. So that's all I have unless you have something for me.
Anybody have anything for council? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, number 7 on our agenda here is a review and approval of planning commission minutes for the meeting held on March 22nd, 2023. Any additions, corrections, anything to change? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes from the meeting held on 22nd March 2023.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Robinson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Goches. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Goches?
Aye.
I'm Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. That one passes 7-0. Once again, reiterate, Jim, thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate you. You've made our jobs easy up here, so
We've covered up for our problems.
you've helped guide and direct us in the way we need to go. So hopefully your replacement does the same thing for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you.
Yes.
This ain't the last time you're hearing from us, though, so. All right. Number 8 on our agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Commissioner Hammer.